Hi, it's Ronald the Rules Lawyer. This video is going to be doing double duty. First, it's going to highlight an extreme high-level dragon fight in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I think it's going to showcase how balanced and also therefore tense and workable high-level play can be in Pathfinder 2e, which can't be said for other editions of D&D and Pathfinder. Yes, I played D&D 5th Edition and Pathfinder 1st Edition. I've not played enough of D&D 4e to have a verdict on that. If you want to jump straight to the combat, go to the timestamp on the screen. So I thought that would be fun, and I've been doing these combat demonstrations as part of my Abserd experiment. Abserd is a fictional D&D character created by Puffin Forest of a character who takes a level in every class, which in D&D 3rd edition and 5th edition is not viable. You create a weak character. We can't quite do that in Pathfinder 2e since you're limited to a single class and can only take abilities from other classes, but we're going to try to approximate it as much as possible. We also have the benefit of the free archetype variant that we're using that gives us bonus feats. In this video, we're going to take Abserd from level 7 to 13, adding more classes and have a combat demo. We also get to start to move away from the classic core 4 classes of Rogue, Cleric, Wizard, and Fighter in today's video. And, surprisingly, I think Abserd falters a little here when we get to the higher levels. Which is funny to say. Most people coming from other systems will be surprised that an Abserd can be viable in Pathfinder, but to my core audience, I am usually seen as the Pathfinder 2e advocate. For me to say something could be not balanced in this system, well, might be shocking to some. So quickly about me, I am Ronald the Rules Lawyer. I am a lawyer who has been running tabletop role-playing games for 14 years. I ran an after-school middle school class for 8 years. My preferred system is Pathfinder 2e, but lately in my channel I've been branching out, looking at the history of the hobby, and interested in other systems. If you haven't yet, support my Patreon. It allows me to continue making these videos. I don't make money as a lawyer. If that does not make sense, then look at the video whose thumbnail is on the screen. Also, being a supporter gives you early access to many of my videos and exclusive content, including character sheets for Abserd from 1 to 20 and my current level 1 to 20 plan for him. Okay, so the experiment really quick. We want to find out, is Abserd possible? Is he viable? If it's balanced, is it too balanced? Do your choices matter in this system? We'll see. And other goals that you can see. At the end of part 2, Abserd was level 7. We saw that he was viable at level 7. He continued to be a skirmishing rogue, effectively fighting in the battlefield while complementing that with spells, while not overshadowing the cleric or wizard in the magic department, whose abilities he borrowed from. His base abilities from the rogue marched relentlessly on. They're independent from his feats, which he's now investing in other classes. So he's still been getting better at using sneak attack and skirmishing and using skills very well. So what does he get at these next levels? And again, on my Patreon, I'm going to have a character sheet for Abserd at every level. The basic spellcasting feats that he took from Cleric and Wizard auto-scale, and at 8th level, give him a 3rd rank spell slot. For his Wizard spellbook, he's going to add Fireball and Haste to it. This is the last thing that those feats will give him, however. Remember, at every even level, he's going to devote his class feat to an archetype feat. So with the free archetype variant, he gets 2 archetype feats at every level. He's already taken the Cleric dedication feat. So next in the Cleric feat tree, he's going to take Basic Dogma. That's the Cleric archetype feat that lets him take a 1st or 2nd level Cleric class feat. And with that, he will take Domain Initiate. This gives him a domain spell, which is a focus spell, which gives him a focus points pool. In Pathfinder, that is a rechargeable resource. He will have 1 point in his pool, and he can use that to cast this domain spell we're about to see. Every combat, if he has sufficient time, 10 minutes, to refocus between every encounter. However, I made a mistake, and I'm going to have to retcon something in my last video where he worshipped Grandmother Spider. He's had a change of heart. The problem was, I want him to have access to the darkness domain. And Grandmother Spider has access to that domain, yes, but only as an alternate domain, which requires taking an additional feat. I want to get around that little obstacle. And so he is actually going to be worshipping the Cosmic Caravan. It's worshipped by wanderers, basically, who cherish the night and look at the stars. So his domain spell, his new focus spell, is going to be Cloak of Shadow, which creates a 20-foot emanation of dim light. In Pathfinder, if your enemies do not have low light vision, you can hide in that concealed area, which triggers a sneak attack. His second archetype feat is going to be his new class. He's going to take the Fighter Dedication feat.
Hey, come join our church. Our Holy Mother welcomes everyone with open arms. And then after a while, they're like, maybe not you, and I got kicked out of there too. And after I left them, I joined up with the Wilderness Guards. The Wilderness Guards? Yes, the Wilderness Guards. A group of soldiers.
Now, it doesn't actually give him anything at this level. As a rogue, he's already trained in martial weapons, but it does give him another skill, and that skill is going to be survival. And with that, Abserd now has every non-lore skill in Pathfinder 2e, and that's 16 skills. Now he needs to take 2 more fighter feats before he can take a new archetype. His skill feat is going to be Assurance Medicine. That's the feat that lets him forego rolling a check in a specific skill. Being able to treat injuries without fear of failure could be useful. As a rogue and being a master of skills, he gets to increase a skill every level, and that's going to be increasing stealth from expert to master. In addition to his dexterity, he gets to add his level +6 now because he's a master. At level 9, he gets a skill increase, and this time he's going to increase deception to master. He also gets a couple of unique rogue class features. He gets Debilitating Strike. Whenever he hits a foe that is off guard, which he's going to want to do to get that sneak attack damage, he gets to apply a debuff. He gets to make that enemy have a slower speed or become enfeebled 1, like a strength penalty, until the end of Abserd's next turn. He also gets Rogue Resilience. If you're familiar with other editions of D&D and Pathfinder and the Evasion ability, this is like that, but for Fortitude saving throws, also while increasing his proficiency to Expert. As a rogue, he gets skill feats at every level, and his skill feat is going to be Swift Sneak. Most people, when they sneak and try to stay hidden or become undetected to the enemies, they have to go at half their speed. Not for Abserd. He gets to go at his full speed. At level 9, he gets an Ancestry feat. You continue to improve in your ancestry, taking feats from, for him, either human or elf. And he's going to take the Multi-Talented Ancestry feat. This lets him take another class. He gets to take a new dedication feat without having to take 3 feats in his most recent archetype first. Also, if he's a half-elf or Ayuvaran, he gets to ignore that dedication feat's minimum attribute scores, which Abserd doesn't need, but it's good to know. Well, he's going to be a summoner. The Summoner is the magical friend class in Pathfinder 2e. I actually think it's kind of a misnomer of a name. You're not necessarily better at summoning, but you have an interplanar friend who is very customizable, who kind of functions as your fighter while you cast spells, and you have a more limited number of spell slots per day compared to, let's call them full casters like clerics and wizards. It's a charisma-based caster, so we've covered 5 of the 6 main ability scores or attributes in the game. So Abserd has found a phantom friend, the Ghost Lawyer. Again, an eidolon is a very customizable creature from another plane, and in lore, in Pathfinder's lore, they come from the ethereal plane. However, this game master is going to allow this eidolon to come from Earth. There are many different kinds of eidolons that you can choose, and this is going to be the Devotion Phantom Eidolon. They have a strong sense of duty, an undying devotion. My link with Abserd prevents me from succumbing to corruption and undeath, and together we will grow in strength and fulfill my devotion. So he's devoted to helping Abserd until he can get the hell away from him. So eidolons are kind of like Pathfinder 2e characters. You get a basic chassis and you get to take feats to add on to their abilities. It gives Abserd access to the occult tradition of magic. That's one of the 4 traditions. However, the dedication feat does not give him spells, not even cantrips. Ronald will be medium size. Eidolons get 2 attacks in Pathfinder. They get a primary attack, which is more powerful, and a secondary attack, which has the agile and finesse traits, which therefore can be more accurate as a follow-up attack, and can also use dexterity. The player can choose bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage for each of these attacks. I first thought it would be cool to have a slap ability, or to have a nails attack, but I settled with a casebook. The casebook is going to have the Fatal D10 trait. That means that not only will it have an additional damage die on a critical hit, but all of the damage dice convert from D6s to D10s. The Ghost Lawyer can benefit from the runes from one of Abserd's weapons and the runes on his armor. We'll see what gear Abserd gets later. There are two types of Devotion Phantom Eidolons. The Ghost Lawyer is going to be a Stalwart Guardian, basically more strength than dexterity. These are the default starting attributes for the Ghost Lawyer at the first levels of the game. However, when Abserd gets attribute boosts every 5 levels, any Eidolon also gets 4 different attribute boosts. So he's actually going to boost his strength, dexterity, constitution, and wisdom. His boost in strength is only a partial boost at this time. The Summoner dedication also gives the 2 skills that the Eidolon is associated with, medicine and occultism. But Abserd already has those, so this becomes 2 additional skills that he gets to add. He's going to take Earth Lore and Legal Lore. And by the way, any skill proficiencies that they have are shared between the 2 characters. So Abserd is proficient with every single non-lore skill in the game, and he's also a master in 3 skills. So is the Ghost Lawyer. Also, Abserd's master with perception and also master with reflex saves are also shared by the Ghost Lawyer. His attacks and defenses are separate, however. They are only trained, and so his attacks are actually behind those of Abserd, who is an expert in weapon attacks at this time. So that's what he gets from a single feat, the Summoner Dedication feat. At level 10, he gets his next set of attribute boosts in 4 different scores, and he's going to boost that partially boosted dexterity up to +5, and intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. The Ghost Lawyer also gets boosts as well, and he's going to improve all of his physical stats and his wisdom. Abserd is now trying to get 3 feats in Fighter and 3 feats in Summoner before he can take his next archetype dedication feat. He's going to focus on Fighter this level. He's going to take Basic Maneuver. That is the feat that lets him take a 1st or 2nd level Fighter class feat. And he's going to take Double Slice. This is a 2-action activity that lets him make 2 attacks, and they both are at high accuracy. If he has an agile weapon in one hand, and he does with his dagger, then they're both done at the same accuracy. So if it's the first attacks he makes this turn, neither of them has the multiple attack penalty. Some of you will remember he has another rogue feat that spends 2 actions to make 2 attacks. That has a different benefit. It means that no matter what, that foe will be off guard to the second attack. Each has their own use case. Importantly, Double Slice applies precision damage, such as from sneak attack, only once, which sounds bad for the rogue. But also, they're both at full accuracy, and you get to combine the damage from both strikes if they hit before applying resistances and weaknesses. Good against resistances, bad against weaknesses. His next Fighter archetype feat is going to be Reactive Striker. This gives him the powerful Reactive Strike reaction, formerly known as Attack of Opportunity. Abserd doesn't have any feats that give him a powerful reaction, actually, so this fills an empty slot. If you come from 5e, Reactive Strike triggers off of many more things than opportunity attacks. It includes somebody trying to manipulate something, and that includes most spells. If you critically hit, you can disrupt that manipulate action, any move action, including one that stays within your reach, or standing up, or ranged attacks of any kind. For his skill feat, he is going to take Foil Senses. He is always considered as taking precautions against extraordinary non-visual senses of other creatures, such as scent or tremor sense or echolocation. His skill increase is going to increase intimidation up to expert. At level 11, characters get a general feat, and he is going to take Incredible Initiative, +2 circumstance bonus to all initiative rolls. So he gets to start even earlier, especially since he has that Master Stealth that he can roll initiative with. He's going to increase his Intimidation to Master, and he gets some class features. His Sneak Attack increases from +2d6 to +3d6. Remember, you can proc Sneak Attack more than once per turn. His bonus skill feat is going to be Battle Cry. Now that he's a master in Intimidation, which just happened this level, he gets to try to demoralize an enemy by screaming while rolling initiative. Also, he gets Rogue Expertise. His class DC, which is like a default difficulty class for his special rogue abilities, increases to Expert. He's not taking feats in Rogue, not since level 2 at least, and so this doesn't really affect him. Then at level 12, he's going to take 2 Summoner archetype abilities. First is called Initial Eidolon Ability. Summoners, actual full class summoners get an initial ability keyed to their eidolon type. You don't get that from the dedication feat. You have to take this. For the Ghost Lawyer, that special ability is called Dutiful Retaliation. If someone hits Abserd, I'll get to hit them with my casebook. I just have to be within 15 feet of both of them. I don't even have to have reach toward the enemy. The second summoner feat is Expert Combat Eidolon. Basically, the Ghost Lawyer's attacks go from trained to expert. He gets to do more damage if Abserd has the weapon specialization class feature, which he does. And if Abserd ever becomes an expert in his defenses as opposed to just trained, which he still is, then so does the Ghost Lawyer. Note that this would be a very powerful advancement for someone dipping into Summoner at low levels. That's why it is gated as a level 12 feat. If Abserd took Summoner dedication early in his career, he'd have to wait a while before taking this. But because he's already higher level, he can take it soon after dipping into Summoner. Note that he's taken 3 feats in Summoner, but he can't cast any spells in Summoner. Those require different feats that he has the option of taking. For his skill feat, he's going to take Lengthy Diversion, which, when he distracts people in combat and gets people to stop paying attention to him, that distraction can last beyond the end of his turn. His next skill increase is going to improve his athletics to expert. Now, Abserd does not have a very high strength. He wasn't planning on using athletics. However, the Ghost Lawyer has a good strength, and remember, they share skill proficiencies. Next is level 13, and this is a huge level. He gets a lot of things at this level, as you can see. First, the ancestry feat that he's going to take is Elf Step. This will let him step 2 times for a single action. He's going to increase his medicine skill to master. Remember, he cannot increase anything to legendary yet. That requires 15th level. His skill feat is going to be Terrified Retreat. Now that he is a master in intimidation, with this feat, when he critically succeeds at demoralizing a foe, they will flee for a round, if they are lower level than he is. Next, this is a big one. He gets Master Tricks. His weapon attacks increase from Expert to Master. His attack bonus jumps by 3 at this level. This also gives a little bonus to damage the way weapon specialization works. His perception goes from Master to Legend, and his defenses go up from Trained to Expert. And remember, the Ghost Lawyer's defenses increase as well. So I'm going to show on the screen his gear that he had at level 7. This is what he has instead at level 13 with his new budget. He gets a +2 greater striking Fearsome Frost Rapier. It's more accurate, does more damage dice. He's also adding property runes. Fearsome makes an enemy frightened on a critical hit. Frost does an extra d6 of cold damage and can slow a creature on a crit as well. He has greater doubling rings, so all the math enhancing runes and the property runes are shared with the weapon in his offhand, the dagger. And remember, all of these runes are shared by the Ghost Lawyer. He has +2 resilient Shadow Leather, higher armor class, higher saving throws. Shadow gives a bonus to stealth. The Ghost Lawyer benefits from these runes as well. From before, he still has an Infiltrator Thieves Toolkit, Bracelet of Dashing, Healer's Gloves, Ventriloquist's Ring, and Demon Mask. These give him bonuses to skills and give him some once per day abilities. Now he gets Thunder Blast Slippers, a +2 item bonus to acrobatics checks, and once per day he gets to go really fast, avoid reactions based on movement, and do a sonic boom at the end. He also has Obsidian Goggles, which lets him once per day get dark vision for an hour. Cloak of Illusions, formerly known as Cloak of Elvenkind, lets him cast invisibility once per day and do the Figment cantrip, sound and visual illusions at will. And finally, because he has the wizard archetype, he can use arcane scrolls, and he's going to get 4 scrolls of invisibility, the heightened 4th rank version that lets him stay invisible after making an attack. So now let's see level 13 Abserd in action. Alright, Abserd's band of heroes has also leveled up to level 13. The wizard, however, is not here and is replaced by a summoner. They have been pursuing giants who have been acting in service of a group of dragons who plan to invade the realm. They have fought their way through a cave complex and are now about to take on the dragon that rules here. We are about to see an extreme fight, which under Pathfinder 2e's encounter building math, which is generally accurate, means that what they're facing is about equal in strength to the party. They will need to use their wits even more than usual to prevail. Abserd in exploration mode has been leading the party, simultaneously avoiding notice and also searching for traps, which he can do with the Trap Finder feat that he took at level 1. It also doesn't hurt that he's now legendary in perception and has a godly plus 24. While exploring, the 2 summoners in the group manifest their eidolons. The summoner in the group summons her dragon friend, who she's also able to ride as a steed thanks to a summoner feat that she took. Also, Abserd manifests the Ghost Lawyer, and the Ghost Lawyer can do exploration activities as well and is going to be investigating the surroundings using his vast library of skills and lore that he has and shares with Abserd. Abserd decides to scout ahead. Using his Cloak of Illusions, he's able to cast invisibility once per day. This is going to last 10 minutes. He also activates his Obsidian Goggles, which lets him have dark vision for 1 hour once per day. So with his invisibility and his dark vision and his plus 27 in stealth, which he is a master in, he ventures ahead and scouts. He notices a magical alarm spell in the way. With his high stealth, he's able to still sneak through it. He sees a vast cavern with a very large, a huge, in fact, black dragon resting on a hoard of gold, and some frost giants and a fire giant that accompany it. There is also a magical light illuminating part of the cavern. The guards are not on alert, he notes to himself. He gets closer, and the dragon normally would smell him at this point, but because Abserd has the foil senses feat, the dragon doesn't notice him. Abserd goes back and reports to the group. The group notes the giants casually. They are not a formidable threat to them at this point. Their interest is on the dragon, and the summoner says that she thinks that this is an ancient black dragon, a formidable foe, one that has an acid breath weapon. They decide to approach cautiously in darkness. The cleric, the fighter, and the summoner drink their dark vision elixirs. The cleric casts a heightened 4th rank silence spell. The heightened version creates a 10-foot emanation that moves with the target. They approach, and the silence fighter goes ahead and creates a silent zone within the tunnel. Abserd has the Quiet Allies feat, making this easier, and he's giving them a +3 bonus now because he's a master in stealth. Abserd also casts Bullhorn on himself, making his voice much louder. Before, he could project his voice 500 feet. Now it's a mile, and it lasts for 10 minutes. Silence on the fighter is going to expire in a minute, so they time the following buffs so that they can break in right when the silence spell ends. Abserd with his wizard archetype can use higher rank arcane scrolls. He's going to cast 4th rank invisibility on himself, letting him stay invisible for a minute even after he makes attacks. He then prays to the Cosmic Caravan and casts Bless, which gives a bonus to everyone's attack rolls and saves against fear, in a 15-foot radius. Meanwhile, the Ghost Lawyer sneaks ahead in front of the fighter. The Cleric is going to cast Zealous Conviction, girding people's defenses against mental attacks and giving them temporary hit points. The Summoner casts 7th rank Haste on all the player characters. Each of them has a bonus action that can be used to strike or stride. Abserd expands the radius of Bless to 25 feet, and prays to the Cosmic Caravan to cloak him in shadow. He uses his Focus spell. He can cast this every battle if he has 10 minutes to refocus between them. And Abserd sneaks up here at full speed because he has Swift Sneak. He's then going to instigate the combat, as is his wont. They all roll initiative. And just by rolling initiative, Abserd's gonna scream using his bullhorn voice that can be heard a mile around. He gets to demoralize somebody, and this frost giant's within range. He is a master in intimidation. That is going to critically succeed, so the frost giant is going to be frightened too, and also because Abserd has terrified retreat, he is going to be fleeing for a round. It's now his turn, and he is quickened because of the haste spell. He has 4 actions between him and the Ghost Lawyer. One of them has to be stride or strike. He wants to ambush this frost giant, who has not acted yet. Because Abserd's a rogue, it is off guard to all of his attacks. But he's not just going to walk up and stab it if he can do something more spectacular. He is going to use his Thunderblast Slippers, 2 actions to let him stride 60 feet, move like the wind, and end with, well, you'll see. First thing he does is go up here. His Cloak of Darkness spell can counteract this magical light. It is not that difficult to check, and he succeeds. So this plunges the entire cavern into darkness, which he and the party can see through, but not the giants. He continues his 60 feet of movement and moves to this spot. And this giant, in addition to hearing a terrifying scream, now hears a sonic boom next to him in the darkness as Abserd plants his feet into the ground. It's a 5-foot emanation that does bludgeoning and sonic damage. And the frost giant has a basic fortitude save, and it's a critical failure, so it takes double damage, and these thunderblast slippers make you fall prone if you critically fail. Abserd has 2 more actions, and he is going to send the Ghost Lawyer over here, and Abserd's going to make an attack. Now, he also shares the multiple attack penalty with the Ghost Lawyer. And because Abserd is a master in weapon attacks while the Ghost Lawyer is only an expert, Abserd's probably going to be relying on his own attacks, most of the time. But Abserd now makes this rapier strike against this frightened, prone, fleeing giant. Now, to show how much has changed since level 7 and a frost giant was a formidable foe, I'm going to show on the screen what Abserd's attack against that frost giant looked like. Since then, Abserd has a much higher attack bonus, which of course can lead to more critical hits, and he has more powerful runes on his rapier. But at level 7, he did on average 11 damage to an off-guard frost giant. Now Abserd's attack bonus is normally plus 26. He can now hit that frost giant by rolling a 2. But he now has the bless spell that he cast on himself, so that's now a plus 27. Plus his scream earlier made this frost giant frightened 2. He can now critically hit this giant by rolling an 8 on the die. And his average damage on his strike now has gone up from about 11 to about 58. Now that's including the cold damage, which this frost giant's immune to, but still, shave off about 5 or 6. So after all that buildup, he stabs with his rapier, and it's a critical hit with an 8, and the deadly D8 trait of the rapier now becomes 2d8 because of the way the trait works. And that is going to be 69 damage to the frost giant. So loud it can be heard a mile away. And he's not done, he just did a critical hit. Because the rapier is part of the sword group, it is off guard to everybody until the start of Abserd's next turn. Doesn't add anything, admittedly, in this situation. Also, the fearsome rune on his rapier triggers and makes it frightened 1. It's already frightened 2, so that doesn't stack. But the frost rune has a special critical ability which forces it to make a fortitude save or be slowed 1. However, it is immune to cold effects, so no effect here. Finally, it is off guard. So every time Abserd hits an off guard foe, since level 9, he's been able to add a debuff effect. And in this case, he's going to make it enfeebled 1. -1 to all strength-based rolls, including attacks and damage in the case of this frost giant. His other option was to give it a -10 status penalty to speed. This lasts until the end of Abserd's next turn. And in case you were wondering, yes, marshals were buffed in Pathfinder 2e. He remains invisible because it's a heightened invisibility spell he cast, and the cavern recoils in horror as they hear, "It's Abserd!" Meanwhile, the ancient black dragon opens its eye. And the dragon is next. It first stands up in all its majesty, evoking fear among all its enemies. They must now make will saving throws. The cleric's zealous conviction gives them all a +2 status bonus against mental effects. They need to beat a 35. Abserd and the Ghost Lawyer both fail, so they become frightened 2. The dragon is a spellcaster and is going to cast Light. Light has a 120-foot range and can shed bright light in a 60-foot radius and dim light in a 120-foot radius. Abserd's Cloak of Shadow might counteract it, but he needs to beat a 37, and being frightened right now, he needs a nat 20. He doesn't succeed. Next is the fighter, who, like every party member, is quickened. He strides up to the giant, and he sees the dragon. He fails his saving throw, but he's only frightened 1 due to his bravery class feature. He now strikes at the frost giant with his flaming sword, and he rolls a 3, but that's enough to hit it. And this includes fire damage, which will trigger its weakness 10 to fire. 40 damage. He could do the killing blow now, but he has an idea. He enters his Paragon's Guard stance, raising his shield without having to spend an action every turn to keep it raised. Then he taunts the fire giant, trying to demoralize it, making it frightened 1. The fighter's frightened condition then ticks down to 0. Next is this poor frost giant who wants to just flee. He is going to stand up. However, that provokes reactive strikes from the fighter and Abserd. They both have reactive strike. Abserd rolls first. That will be a hit and be the killing blow. The cleric's next. The silence effect on the fighter ends now. The cleric strides forward and sees a dragon and needs to make a will save. She is very doughty and so succeeds on her save, and she's only frightened 1. She casts Spiritual Armament, also known as Spiritual Weapon, heightened to 4th rank, and uses it to attack the dragon. She can attack anyone within 120 feet. And her roll of 14 plus her bonus is not enough. She sees that it's going to be very hard to hit this dragon with this spell. She sustains the spell and makes a second attack, but this time against the fire giant. That unfortunately misses, and her frightened goes down to 0. The giants were not ready for this fight and did not have their weapons out. The fire giant takes out its great sword, walks up to the ghost lawyer and swings and hits the ghost lawyer, 26 damage. However, he shares his hit point pool with Abserd, so they both take the damage. This frost giant takes out its great axe and moves up towards Abserd, who's still invisible, and breathes out freezing breath. 19 potential cold damage, basic reflex save. And with a 5, he critically succeeds because that's enough to beat it, and he has evasive reflexes. He gets to treat a success as a critical success. So he's completely unaffected by it. Next is the summoner, who is riding a dragon eidolon. The dragon goes forward. It takes 2 stride actions, and upon seeing the dragon, they both have to make will saves. The dragon fails, frightened 2, but the summoner critically fails and is frightened 4. Also, while moving here, the fire giant makes a reactive strike against the eidolon, hitting for 26 damage. She then spends 2 actions to cast Evolution Surge. This is a focus spell for summoners. It adds abilities to an eidolon, and since she is now 13th level, she gets to give the dragon flight and huge size. It is now a huge flying dragon. This is going to push the fighter and the ghost lawyer out of the way. And the summoner has the Act Together ability. Once per round, she and her eidolon can act together. When one does something, the other can do 1 action. It's essentially an extra action per turn. It also means that while the summoner is hasted, she essentially has 5 actions. So the dragon, with its now 15-foot reach, is going to bite the frost giant, and hits doing 26 damage. Their frightened values go down, and now this frost giant over here is going to take out its great axe, move here and attack the ghost lawyer and miss. Round 2. Abserd could work to make an enemy off guard to him by tumbling through or feinting or flanking, but he doesn't need to because of his invisibility spell. He's just going to move here. But I should note that if he wanted to tumble through, he could use his Assurance skill feat. His acrobatics is very good. He has a guaranteed result of 29, and he only needs to beat a 25 on this fire giant. He tries to stab it. A 39 will hit for 22 damage, and this includes cold damage, which triggers the fire giant's weakness 10 to cold. It takes 32. He then casts the 3rd rank spell Roaring Applause, one of his cleric spells. He does a hero pose and says, "Look at me!" With this flourish, he can cause an enemy to start applauding for him. The DC for his spell is not great for this level, it's 28. The fire giant succeeds, but it still has a partial effect. The fire giant will be denied reactions. If it had failed, it would have been slowed 1, so long as Abserd sustained it. The black dragon starts chanting ancient words and reverses gravity on the party. This will cost all 3 actions, but it causes gravity to reverse in this entire area. Those that are near a wall have a chance of a reflex save to try to catch on. The cleric is still in the tunnel and is able to catch the wall and safely land on the ceiling, which is 10 feet above. The fighter falls up 25 feet and falls prone and takes 12 damage. The eidolon is flying and so can take the arrest to fall reaction and not take damage from the fall, but lands on the ceiling 25 feet above. Abserd nimbly falls onto the ceiling because he has catfall and he's a master in acrobatics. He gets to treat every fall as 50 feet shorter, so that doesn't even make him prone. He's on the ceiling. However, the ghost lawyer is going to fall, and the ceiling's higher here, 35 feet, and takes 17 damage. So, oof, Abserd does take damage anyway. The fighter is going to stand up, upside down, on the ceiling, and he has quick jump, so he has no problem jumping all the way here. The fire giant actually has reactive strike, but is too busy clapping for Abserd. The fighter is prone, however. He then stands and attacks the fire giant with his last action. That is a crit, 44 damage. That's the fighter's turn, and his shield stays up because of his shield stance. The cleric sustains spiritual armament against the frost giant and hits 13 spirit damage. And she strides twice here. It's a challenge walking along a uneven ceiling. Then she jumps 30 feet down and falls prone in this spot and takes 15 damage. The fire giant steps north to flank the fighter and uses Flaming Strike, 2 actions to hit a 15-foot line. She gets to make greatsword strikes against both the fighter and the cleric with a -2 circumstance penalty. She hits both of them for about 30 damage each. However, the fighter shield blocks about 13 of that. And as a high-level fighter, he reduces that further by 4 because he has the armor specialization ability of his full plate. This frost giant is going to step away a bit and throw rocks at the eidolon. First rock hits for 20 damage, the second misses. This frost giant taunts the fighter, succeeds at demoralizing. The fighter would be frightened 1 here, but his bravery class feature makes that 0. Then the frost giant swings twice and misses. The summoner and her eidolon are going to fly down from the ceiling towards the dragon. She tries to demoralize the dragon, but no luck. Then they act together. She casts Boost Eidolon. For 1 round, the eidolon's attacks do +6 damage. The dragon now tries to bite the dragon, but the enemy has a reaction. Whenever someone tries to attack it, it can do a tail lash. If this hits, this imposes a penalty, and that's a critical hit, doing 57 damage to them. Our dragon now attacks with a -2 penalty and hits. With Boost Eidolon, that is 31 damage. Abserd's next, and he wants to leap over here. It's kind of a bit far for him, but because of the height, the GM allows him to try to get there. However, Abserd knows that's going to trigger a reactive strike, so he sustains his Roaring Applause spell, distracting the fire giant, and then makes the leap with his second action. Catfall prevents him from falling prone or taking any damage. He then calls down the ghost lawyer, who falls to the ground, 17 damage to both of them, then attacks the fire giant. That's a hit for 24 damage, but that increases to 34 because of the cold. Abserd and the ghost lawyer no longer are frightened. The enemy dragon now flies right here, south of the eidolon. The eidolon gets a reactive strike here, but misses. The black dragon then breathes acid in a 100-foot line, doing 17d6 acid damage to everyone in the line, 61 to be exact. The eidolon fails, but has resistance to acid, reducing it by 6. The cleric fails, 61 damage. The fighter critically fails, even after spending a hero point. He needed to get a 9 or higher to avoid this, 122 damage. Abserd tries to avoid it, and fails, spends a hero point, and succeeds, and that's a critical success because of his ability. So 0 damage to him. Reverse Gravity stays active, it has a 1-minute duration. I forgot to mention the fire giant was off guard, and Abserd did sneak attack damage. The fighter yells toward Abserd wherever he is and says, "I'll take the Frosty, you take the fire giant," which makes sense given their weapons. He then strides over here and makes 3 attacks. Why 3 basic attacks instead of using one of his feats? Well, it has a weakness to fire damage, and so he can possibly trigger it 3 times. That's a crit, that's another hit, and that's a miss. Does 98 damage, makes it off guard, and also sets it aflame. 1d10 persistent fire damage, triggering its weakness each time. Now that one's kind of doomed. The cleric decides to not sustain spiritual armament. She's going to cast a big 3-action spell. 7th rank, Tempest of Shades. This is an incarnate spell. It's a super summoning spell. It basically simulates summoning an entire army. It does one big thing now, and it does another big thing at the end of her next turn. Forces of undeath come forth in an amalgam of the vengeful dead. She centers it here, and it does a vortex of death and a 60-foot emanation. All enemies must do fortitude saves or be drained. The fire giant and the dragon succeed. They're still drained 1, however. And the frost giants fail. They're each drained 2. This is like constitution damage, taking away hit points equal to their level for each one of the drained condition. And it's a penalty to constitution checks like fortitude saves. The fire giant wants to go after Abserd. Because he's invisible, she has to roll an 11 or higher in order to target him. She succeeds and does hit him. He takes 26 damage. However, the ghost lawyer is going to retaliate with his dutiful retaliation reaction. It doesn't matter if he's prone, he's going to attack her with his casebook. He has a plus 24 to hit normally, and he hits her. And the casebook shares all of the runes on Abserd's rapier. So it's also +2, greater striking, fearsome, and frost. This does 25 damage, but actually 35 damage, which is enough to kill the fire giant. Some excellent defense work by the ghost lawyer. The frost giant down here is going to throw another rock at the eidolon, misses. At this point, the dragon yells at him and says, "Stop being useless! Go attack them!" So the giant starts striding forward and gets caught in the reverse gravity effect and falls onto the ceiling. 15 damage, and then stands up. The summoner knows that attacking this dragon is dangerous because of its reaction, and so she's going to move away and attack the frost giant up here. She and her eidolon land here on the ground. She casts the reinforce eidolon cantrip this time. Instead of extra damage, it gives defensive bonuses this round. Her dragon then uses its special Draconic Frenzy ability. Spends 2 actions to make 3 strikes. 1 with its jaws, 2 with its claws. So if you combine this with the fact that she's hasted, she kind of effectively has 6 actions this turn. It's off guard from the fighter's crit, and this jaws attack will hit 26 damage, and this claw attack will crit, and it's gonna die. It then strides north of the fighter. We're now at round 4, and Abserd is not currently really able to reach either the frost giant or the dragon, but he has some ranged options, including casting Fireball, he says, which is also good against the frost giant. So here we go. This does potentially 24 fire damage. The frost giant fails and has a weakness to fire damage, so that's 34. The dragon critically succeeds. His DC is only 28 after all, so it takes 0 damage. The ghost lawyer then stands up, and Abserd prepares to aid the fighter's next attack roll. Abserd's ready to scream something at its next target. The black dragon now flies up towards the fighter and also gains elevation while doing so, because it has a 20-foot reach with its tail actually, and bites at the dragon eidolon. And that is a critical hit, and despite reinforced eidolon being in effect, that's not enough to stop the power of this dragon. They share a hit point pool, so the summoner's knocked out, and the eidolon unmanifests. It leaves her side, then strikes at the fighter, and misses. The fighter is going to delay for the cleric. The cleric has a spell-shaped feat, also known as meta magic, spends an extra action before casting this 2-action heal on the summoner, which gives the summoner 94 hit points. But by adding heroic recovery, this buffs the summoner +5 to speed, +1 to attack rolls and damage rolls, and also the summoner gets to stand up immediately. And at the end of her turn, her Tempest of Shades does its Depart ability. It does a Howl of Eternity, and all enemies in a 60-foot emanation must now do a will saving throw. The dragon succeeds and is only frightened 1, and the frost giant fails and is frightened 3. The fighter's next and is about to do something amazing. He has a level 8 fighter feat called Sudden Leap. He can basically do a long jump distance, jumping vertically straight upward, using his athletics skill, which he is a master in and has a +26 in. And he has the other level 8 feat called Felling Strike that lets him strike a flying creature and knock them to the ground. He gets to combine these two together. So he rolls athletics, jumps upward, and jumps 34 feet upward. So he's basically above this dragon, and on his way down, Abserd yells, "Hey, look over here!" in his bullhorn voice. This is Abserd's aid check for the fighter's strike. Abserd will do a deception check, and he's a master. He only needs to beat a 15, which is the rules as written DC of aiding. He critically succeeds easily. Because he's a master, he gives a +3 circumstance bonus to the fighter's next strike. So a +32 bonus, and the dragon's AC is lowered by 1 due to the Tempest of Shades, so he only needs a 6 to hit the dragon. But the black dragon has the tail lash reaction, attacks the fighter, and hits. The fighter shield blocks it and takes 15 damage. And that is a critical hit, which will do 42 damage, and sends the dragon to the ground. And not only that, because he used Felling Strike keeps the enemy on the ground until the end of the fighter's next turn. This crit with the flaming sword also sets the dragon on fire, and it takes 1d10 persistent fire damage. He makes another strike, misses, and moves over here to help allies flank. This frost giant continues north, jumps off, and falls next to Abserd, takes 15 bludgeoning damage from the fall, and then stands up. Round 5, Abserd's next, and the dragon's frightened right now, so he has a window of opportunity he doesn't want to lose. He is going to run up to it and use his fighter feat, Double Slice, because he has a weapon in each hand, and because one of them is an agile weapon, his dagger, he gets to make both attacks at his full attack bonus, no multiple attack penalty. Now he arguably could use his rogue feat instead, Twin Feint. 2 actions makes the target off guard to a second attack. But he doesn't need that right now since he's invisible. And also the fighter critted the dragon, making it off guard. So he's gonna go with Double Slice. Now the downside of Double Slice is that if he hits twice, precision damage only applies once, and his sneak attack damage is precision damage. But he figures his other options would suffer the multiple attack penalty and would not likely result in hitting twice anyway, so he does this. With his Bless spell in effect from being a cleric, he has a plus 27 to attack. And the dragon's AC is lowered to 36 right now, so he only needs to roll a 9 to hit it. But he wants to be quite sure that he hits it, so he does a trick he learned in wizard school. He's going to cast Sure Strike. This one action spell lets him roll his next attack roll 2 times and use the better result. He yells, "Sure Strike!" and is going to hit. This includes his 3d6 sneak attack damage, and that is a total of 29. And because it's off guard to him, he's going to make it enfeebled 1 until the end of his next turn. With his follow-up attack with his dagger, which is also at plus 27, he misses. The summoner is going to manifest her eidolon again. This is a 3-action activity that places it on the battlefield, and it gets to make an action immediately. And the eidolon is going to try to trip the dragon using his jaws. He's a master in athletics and succeeds. So it falls prone in addition to everything else, and the eidolon now makes a strike. Since the eidolon was bitten, it has been suffering 4d6 persistent acid damage. Fortunately, it's resistant to acid, so it only takes 8 damage, and it continues to burn from it. The dragon now stands, and this triggers reactive strikes. Unfortunately, the fighter already used his reaction to shield block, but the eidolon and Abserd wail in. Abserd is going to hit, doing 28 damage, and this time giving it minus 10 to its speed, and the eidolon misses. The dragon's now going to try to bite at that fighter. This is a hit, and to this, the cleric reacts. Even though she's lying on the ground, she casts Drop Dead. The fighter appears to fall down dead, but actually turns invisible. The corpse is actually an illusion. A nice protective spell. The dragon does 31 damage to the fighter and appears to die. We're going to create a corpse illusion here for the dragon. It would love to fly away right now, but it was grounded, so it's going to claw at Abserd. And that is going to hit and do 27 damage. And the ghost lawyer unfortunately cannot react to this with dutiful retaliation because they share a reaction, and Abserd just did reactive strike. The cleric is going to try to protect herself in order to protect the party. She is their primary healer. She's going to stand up and walk all the way up here and then cast heal on herself. That takes her to full. The fighter is going to focus on healing himself. He has some potions. He doesn't want to move because the dragon can smell his location, and the party knows that. He drinks 1 potion and takes out another. This frost giant does chill breath on both Abserd and the eidolon. Abserd avoids it easily, and the eidolon succeeds and takes 7 damage. It restores its grip on that 2-handed weapon and then swings at the ghost lawyer. This hits and does 20 damage to them. He is in trouble. Round 6, Abserd does not want to attack the dragon right now. He does not want to provoke those attacks from it. He can't reach the frost giant right now, but the ghost lawyer can. He's in 2 places at once, having an eidolon. So the ghost lawyer is going to swing the casebook at him. And that's a crit with the casebook, and this is, because it was frightened, it's a fatal weapon, so not only an additional d10, but all of the damage dice become d10s. 68 damage. That is going to kill the Frost Giant. Because he's invisible, he can now sneak away and try to become undetected. And with Swift Sneak, he can go at full speed, so 35 feet here, and he has a chance of losing the dragon. And he succeeds with that, nor can the dragon smell him because of his foil senses feat. Now he's going to try to heal himself using his battle medicine feat. Because he's a master in medicine now, he can try to heal more hit points by going for the master level check, DC 30. He has a plus 23, and that succeeds, and he heals himself 42 health. That actually heals more than his second rank heal spell that he has prepared. Battle medicine only works once per day per target, by default. Now the summoner, she wants to stand up and also protect her eidolon from this dragon, so she's going to cast her reinforced eidolon cantrip, but she has a special focus spell that she learned from a feat. It's a free action called Extend Boost. She does a Arcana check to try to extend it to 3, possibly 4 rounds. That succeeds, and so it is going to be 3 rounds of reinforced eidolon. She also wants to kind of spread out, so she's going to move over here. Then the eidolon tries to bite the dragon, and that misses. It still suffers from persistent acid damage, so it takes 8 damage. The dragon now flies into this reverse gravity zone and is going to breathe acid in this line. And that's going to be 40 damage, not as much as it could have been. The rules lawyer has a master in reflex saves, and that succeeds! 20 damage to the both of them. The dragon eidolon is going to fail and take the full damage. The cleric does another special heal using another feat, defensive recovery, not only healing it nearly 100 hit points, but also giving it a +2 status bonus to all of its defenses for a round. She then moves to a spot of safety. Our fighter, who is not dead, drinks another potion, and over the course of their travels, they have encountered a number of dragons, and this fighter has had the wherewithal to put a winged rune on his armor. He spends 2 actions to activate flight. He also takes 7 persistent acid damage and succeeds at ending the effect. Round 7. Abserd, in order to treat his own wounds, had to drop his dagger. So first thing he does is pick up the dagger. He's going to move right here, and he knows that his invisibility spell's about to end. So he is going to create a diversion and say to the dragon, "Hey, look behind you!" And he can be heard a mile around, of course. He succeeds, critically succeeds. Now, create a diversion usually expires at the end of his turn. However, he has the lengthy diversion feat. He gets to stay hidden to an enemy for at least another round. He decides to end his turn at this point, and next, the summoner sends the dragon here and flies a little upward and then attacks the evil dragon. Using Draconic Frenzy, makes 3 attacks. The enemy responds with Tail Lash and hits. Reinforced Eidolon reduces the incoming damage by 3. It hits 1 time and does 20 damage. And the summoner runs up and moves right here. Next, the black dragon is going to cast Sure Strike. It is a spellcaster, and empower this upcoming Jaws strike against the Eidolon. Gets to roll twice, and that is a critical hit, not surprisingly. It's going to do 72 damage, which actually gets reduced to 63 after various resistances. And the summoner has a reaction called Summoner's Call. Whenever the Eidolon would take damage, she gets to teleport it to her side. So she's gonna move it all the way, well, up here, out of the dragon's reach, and this pisses the dragon off. The dragon flies here and actually has to fly in order to be at this level because of the reverse gravity effect. The cleric casts Heal on the Eidolon and gives it the associated buffs, and she's going to stay where she is. Our fighter, who's not actually dead, is going to move here and then flies here near ground level so that he doesn't have to fall up. And the dragon is sniffing. Who's that? Remember that he's invisible still. And the fighter makes a swing, and the dragon detects this and makes a tail lash, and that misses thanks to the invisibility. And the fighter yells, "Roar!" And he's not actually making a strike, he's making a felling strike right now. So that means if he hits with it and it's off guard right now, then it will fall to the ceiling. It does 21 damage, and the dragon takes 15 damage, falling upward to the ceiling. Next is Abserd. His invisibility expires now, but because he had created a distraction and has lengthy diversion, he is still hidden to this dragon. He is going to swift sneak up and fall onto the ceiling using catfall, so the dragon is off guard to him. Now he's going to use double slice. This will hit, doing sneak attack damage, 28, and he makes it enfeebled while he's at it. His dagger attack is going to miss, and then he leaps back to the ground using catfall. He is having a lot of fun jumping around. The summoner wants to send the eidolon up 2 actions to reach it, and it bites the dragon with its jaws, doing 20 damage. The black dragon has had enough of that cleric healing everybody. It's going to fly over, and it has an insane 150-foot fly speed. The eidolon misses on its reactive strike, and it's going to go for the cleric. That's a crit, 88 damage, and this next attack, a claw, is gonna knock out the cleric, who goes straight to dying 2. Well, the fighter is going to fly over, hit the ground, then stride up to the dragon, and with his last 2 actions, he's going to do his sudden leap felling strike trick again, and the dragon is going to respond with tail lash and hit. The fighter takes 22 damage, and the fighter is going to hit and bring the dragon to the ground, 26 damage. Round 9, this fight has been so long that Bless is expired. What he's going to do is move up here and get within range of that cleric and cast heal himself. He knows the spell too. He points his finger. He doesn't heal as much as she does. It's a 2nd rank spell, but it'll do. And he's going to give her back 29 health. On the summoner's turn, haste expires for everybody. That doesn't last forever either. She casts the 7th rank spell, True Target, on 4 allies. They all get to roll their next attack roll 2 times and use the better result against the dragon. She targets Abserd, the fighter, the ghost lawyer, and the eidolon. Then she sends the eidolon in, and it makes an attack while rolling twice. This is going to be a hit, doing 19 damage. The cleric is next. Her spell, Zealous Conviction, ends on everybody now. She stands up, and she casts the guidance cantrip on both Abserd and the fighter. Her turn ends, and she continues to burn with acid. She takes, 20 damage, and still burns. That dragon, blinded by pain and rage, goes after the cleric again, and crits. She goes down to dying 3. Then it claws at the fighter. That's another hit for 31 damage, and it tries to fly away. However, there are 3 creatures here who have reactive strikes, and 2 of them will have advantage, or the ability to roll twice. The fighter attacks and misses. The eidolon attacks, and that's a hit. 24 damage, it's almost dead. And Abserd is next, gets to roll twice, and this is a hit. This is the killing blow, folks. The dragon is going to fall to Abserd. That's what you get for opposing Abserd, and it's heard a mile around. When they search the area, including the dragon's hoard, they find messages that prove their theory that the dragons were actually servants to a horde of demons that will overwhelm the planet. Just a couple of other things I wanted to show that didn't come up in this very long, convoluted fight. Abserd's Cloak of Shadow focus spell that he got as a cleric darkens bright light in a 20-foot radius around him, makes it dim light. If an enemy does not have low light vision, say this particular creature, then he can hide in plain sight because he benefits from concealment, making himself hidden to the foe and therefore able to get sneak attack damage against that off-guard foe. Abserd, meanwhile, has low light vision himself, and with his obsidian goggles has even dark vision. And of course, whenever he's hidden, he can sneak away at full speed with Swift Sneak. And our friend, the Ancient Black Dragon, if it had cast a spell that has the Manipulate trait, while Abserd threatened it, Abserd could do a reactive strike on that as well. And if he does a critical hit, disrupt the spell. We will now look at what we have learned about Pathfinder 2e high-level combat and assess the viability of Abserd. Now it's time for analysis. Let's assess how Pathfinder 2e handles high-level combat compared to D&D 5th edition, and also look at Abserd and where he's at, and does he actually falter now that we get to the higher levels? In D&D 5th edition, a 13th level party could cast Force Cage on the dragon and use the microwave strat. Okay, let's assess Abserd. In Pathfinder 2e, our super multi-classing character, I was surprised was a bit lackluster in some areas. He's fine as a rogue, but his other abilities pale in comparison. But perhaps this is to be expected in Pathfinder's one-class design. He continues to advance uninterruptedly in his rogue abilities, while taking just a little of this and that. First, let's quickly evaluate him as a rogue, in which he's doing fine. The headline news is that his reflexes are amazing. He's now legendary. He can easily make saving throws, which are then converted into critical successes. Fighter is tough being in the front lines taking hits, but Abserd is tough in his own way, with the way he was avoiding breath weapons and fall damage with catfall. His attacks have gotten a lot better. He's now a master in weapon strikes, and the runes on his weapons improved his combat ability clearly. Debilitating Strike gives him a new toy to debuff enemies with. Now, these combat examples kind of underplay his roguishness, actually. They're trying to highlight his abilities in other classes, but he actually has a classic rotation that he can fall back on if he has 3 actions and can focus on offense. His rogue feats that he got in the first couple of levels, Tumble Behind and Twin Feint, he could combo together. Tumble Behind, go through an enemy with his first action, then Twin Feint against a foe that is off guard against both attacks. He's amazing with skills. He's good with every single non-lore skill in the game, and he's a master in acrobatics, deception, intimidation, medicine, and stealth, while also being legendary in perception. He has more skill feats than anyone else with 14. His background one is not shown here. We saw in this example him using Battle Cry with Terrified Retreat, Battle Medicine, Catfall, Foil Senses, Lengthy Diversion, Quiet Allies, and Swift Sneak. He could have used Assurance to get guaranteed successes in acrobatics or medicine on some occasions, and he never had occasion to use Kip Up because he never fell prone, even with reverse gravity in effect. Before we assess how he's doing with the new classes, let's look at his spellcasting and his cleric and wizard archetypes. Well, the news here is that he stopped scaling since level 8. His feats did not give him anything beyond those 3rd rank spell slots that he got then. His cantrips and his Cloak of Shadows focus spell have been scaling, however. In contrast, the cleric has been auto-advancing in her class. She has 5 maximum rank heals, she has spell-shaped feats to improve those heals, and she has access to higher rank spells like Silence, which help the party debuff, and Tempest of Shades and Drop Dead were awesome. Abserd's Fireball spell was meh. It was a 3rd rank spell, and that was about 8 levels ago. His attack spells have not kept pace, and he's only trained in spellcasting and hasn't focused on wisdom. The lesson to be drawn here is that attack spells don't scale very well, and Abserd should limit himself probably to spells that buff, debuff, heal, or give utility. The Bless spell, for example, was very good in this combat. And there are many spells, only some of which he used here, that can help his roguery. Invisibility was very useful. All of his targets were off guard to him, and he could do sneak attack damage and debilitating strike on them. Sure Strike is great for clutch moments. Cloak of Shadows is situational. Its ability of creating an area of dim light. While he has low light vision, he can hide in that area, but only against foes that don't have low light vision or better. And I find that at these higher levels, that actually doesn't occur very often. However, its ability to counteract light effects can be very useful. If that dragon wasn't there to replace the light, it would have completely turned the tide of battle. And because focus spells auto-heighten with the character, including Abserd, he was able to counteract lower rank magical light spells very easily. Also, let's not forget that the archetype unlocks all items that have divine and arcane spells on them. He can activate those even if they have spells that are higher rank than spells he can cast. A resourceful player will notice that there are many utility spells that are cheap at this level as consumable items that in this case Abserd can use to great effect. Invisibility is awesome, Sure Strike is awesome, and only having access to a spellcasting tradition via an archetype lets him do this easily. There is a skill feat called Trick Magic Item that requires a skill check and it costs an extra action, which is not practical for him. Okay, so what has Abserd gained from his fighter archetype? Reactive Striker now gives him a strong fighting ability to use in combat as a reaction. Now there are other reactions he could have gotten from a rogue feat, but this definitely was a valuable feat in this fight. Next to his rogue feat Twin Feint, this gives him another tool. It's great for those occasions where you want to get 2 attacks at full accuracy. Very useful against those very hard to hit enemies like the dragon. Also, its ability to combine damage before applying resistances and weaknesses could be very useful against certain foes that resist damage. The downside is that it doesn't let him apply sneak attack twice if both attacks hit. Again, it's situational. However, Abserd pales in fighting next to the fighter, which is like duh. He could fight and stand his ground and tank and draw attention away from squishier characters. With that legendary weapon accuracy, he had a plus 28 to hit, unlike Abserd's plus 26. He had great defenses. He's able to wear heavy armor and also get into a shield stance that basically improved his armor class through the combat. Shield block allowed him to absorb damage into that shield. Other classes can get it, but it costs a feat. He got it for free at level 1. Sudden Leap and Felling Strike were awesome and were used multiple times. His Bravery class feature let him shake off fear, and there were other fighter feats he had that just there wasn't enough time to show. And he's also, every morning, able to learn a fighter class feat the way a cleric might prepare a spell. Now, how's Abserd as a summoner? First, I want to address how Pathfinder 2e addresses extra creatures, which, your mileage may vary, can pose problems in other systems because they allow a character to multiply their power and also hog table time, as they have many more actions than other players do. Pathfinder 2e sacrifices realism for balance in this case, giving Abserd and the Ghost Lawyer a shared pool of actions, a shared hit point pool, and they also share the multiple attack penalty. Theme-wise, it reflects how connected they are. Now, math-wise, we see how Pathfinder supports the ability of a character like Abserd to have an extra fighting companion who progresses with him but doesn't overshadow him. Let's compare Abserd's attacks with those from the Ghost Lawyer. Abserd has an edge with accuracy of his weapon. The Ghost Lawyer's attacks are not hopelessly behind those of Abserd, they are 2 lower. In every other respect, they are comparable. Pathfinder 2e has, I would argue, elegantly made this possible with its proficiency system. These differences reflect the fact that Abserd is a master and the Ghost Lawyer is an expert. The Ghost Lawyer is not hopelessly behind because they both get to add their level to their attack bonus, and their bonuses are controllable from the system's point of view through this proficiency system. This also has the benefit of making it possible to convey a character's skill in something simply by saying their level and their proficiency. For example, both of them are level 13 and expert in defense, so they actually have the same armor class of 34. Now, in a system where every +1 matters, a difference of 2 in accuracy is huge. So this relegated the Ghost Lawyer to being in a support role or attacking when it made sense. I should also note that Abserd had to invest in the level 12 archetype feat, Expert Combat Eidolon, to make the Ghost Lawyer this good. If he had not, his statistics would have been even farther behind, and a player who does that probably got the Eidolon for different reasons. So, the Ghost Lawyer wasn't equally good at fighting as Abserd, but he was very useful in this fight. The dutiful retaliation reaction not only did damage to enemies, but also made Abserd a less attractive target. It was another reaction though, and they share one reaction between the two of them. Still, I would argue that it's nice to have the option of using either this or Reactive Strike. They trigger in different situations. Another benefit of the Eidolon we didn't really see in this example is that it gives Abserd access to different damage types. If, for example, they fought a giant skeleton who had a weakness to bludgeoning damage, better not to stab it with a rapier and send in a lawyer with a casebook. On paper, and in a White Room scenario, the Ghost Lawyer's attacks are less effective than Abserd's. However, their value is in how they increase his versatility. Also, there are benefits to just having a second creature. There may be situations where Abserd is tied up, literally. One person can free the other. Also in this combat, it was useful to have 2 characters in different places, and they share so many of the same skill proficiencies and can do many of the same actions. And that's something a bit unexplored actually in this example. They are both masters in intimidation and medicine. The Ghost Lawyer doesn't have Abserd's skill feats, but they could double up on some tasks when it makes sense. Demoralize is a powerful skill action that can be used to debuff enemies, but they are immune to it for 10 minutes if it comes again from the same creature. So if you have 2 creatures who are master in intimidation, that could be useful. All that said, the Ghost Lawyer paled next to the Dragon Eidolon. Clearly it was a main combatant for the summoner character. It had that same accuracy plus 26 that Abserd has. It is also a master in strikes. But it's not just the math. There are feats the summoner took that improves her eidolon, or her ability to fight with it. She gave it acid attack, acid resistance, she was able to ride it like a mount, a defensive cantrip to protect it, an ability to extend the momentary boosts that she gave to it, and the ability to call it to her side as a reaction. The Ghost Lawyer's Dutiful Retaliation ability was the level 1 ability that a Devotion Phantom Eidolon gets by default. There are further abilities that an Eidolon gets at higher levels if you are a summoner. At level 1, the Dragon Eidolon got Breath Weapon, and at level 7 got Draconic Frenzy, which we saw a lot of. There are several abilities exclusive to the summoner that cannot be gotten from archetypes, the big one being the ability to act together, which effectively gave the summoner an extra action. She also at level 1 got the Boost Eidolon cantrip to boost its damage, and Evolution Surge, a focus spell that lets her add abilities on the fly to the Eidolon when needed. It auto-heightens too, and by this level can give the Eidolon flight or huge size. And of course, the summoner had access to spell casting and 6th and 7th rank spell slots. Abserd never chose those archetype feats that would have unlocked spell casting for him, and he would have gotten occult spells because of the Devotion Phantom. But yeah, the summoner cast Mass Haste and True Target. She also had a Dragon Form spell to polymorph herself, which I thought would have been cool to use, but it didn't make sense for this example. And the summoner is an expert in spellcasting, while Abserd remains only trained. And for those who watch this video and think, the summoner's great, best class, cast spells, can fight really hard with her eidolon, know that the summoner has only a few spell slots per day. Okay, so let's put it all together and ask ourselves, does Abserd falter here at these levels? And I, the Pathfinder 2e advocate, will surprise some of you by saying, I think it kind of did. However, I also think it's not that big a deal, and the answer is more complicated. Because let's look at what he gave up on. There are some great rogue feats that he could have gotten at this time. Opportune Backstab is a reaction that lets him do a free strike against a foe that an ally of his successfully hits with a melee attack. Precise Debilitation's level 10 feat that he can take as being a member of the Thief Racket gives him extra options for his debilitating strike. Instead of making them enfeebled or have a lower speed, he can make them off guard until the end of his next turn, or take an extra 2d6 precision damage from his attacks. Preparation, level 12 feat, lets him spend an action to give himself an extra rogue reaction. And there are some rogue feats like Nimble Dodge, Reactive Pursuit, Sidestep, and Opportune Backstab that give him a rogue reaction. The way archetypes work, when you're taking class feats from another class, which you did in this case for the Wizard, Cleric, and Fighter, they have to be equal to half your level or lower. So one could say, well, he's giving up higher level feats for lower level feats. Bad. It's like missing out on higher spell levels when you're a spellcaster who decides to multi-class out of spellcasting in other systems. So I will try to look at the opposing view. Well, let's look at these 3 potential feats and contrast them to feats he did take at these levels from Fighter and Summoner. In the case of the Fighter, the Dedication feat was a dead feat. He did not gain anything because he was already good at martial weapons, so that's bad. Its benefit was to unlock other benefits from the Fighter tree. Double Slice gives him the ability to make 2 attacks at full accuracy. It's not available in the Rogue feat tree, and it's useful against high armor class enemies and enemies whose resistance you want to get past. Also against many foes that are not super high AC like this dragon, it gives Abserd 2 strikes that have a fair opportunity to critically hit. He may have rider effects on his critical hit that he wants to get. Reactive Striker is a reaction just like Opportune Backstab, but it has a different trigger and actually has more triggers. And it can disrupt manipulate actions, which includes many spells. So he's basically going in a different direction to enhance his rogue toolkit using fighter feats. Although he already moves on to another archetype, there is a feat in this tree called Fighter Resiliency, which lets him get additional hit points. There's nothing in the rogue class that lets him do this. Now let's compare to the 3 summoner feats he got. The Dedication gave him an eidolon, an extra character. There can be situations where having a second one of you on the battlefield is very useful. You can provide flanking to yourself. The Eidolon also gave him access to more damage types, which has its own value. Initial Eidolon ability gave Dutiful Retaliation, which is a nice way to attack enemies who focus on you, a nice offensive-defensive ability. Expert Combat Eidolon was kind of essential, one might even call it a feat tax, to keep the Ghost Lawyer combat viable at these levels. Also, as I said earlier, this extra creature has all of Abserd's skill proficiencies, and Abserd has every major skill in the game. There's just a whole lot of possibilities that I actually want to invite people to speculate on in the comments. One thing is that the Ghost Lawyer, maybe he could be a scout or serve as a distraction that at any moment Abserd can unmanifest with a 3-action activity. And then, of course, there's a very important factor of fun. Abserd had a lot of fun doing all of these different abilities, including having a Ghost Lawyer around. So again, let's look at the 3 rogue feats that he gave up on. Well, when you look at them in isolation, they do look like they enhance his DPR, let's call it. But that's not our frame of reference. He's not the only character on the battlefield. In Pathfinder 2e, you're often optimizing the party and not just the individual. Part of the problem here of why he may be lackluster in these other areas is that he's dabbling into other areas where the paragon of the fighting class and of summoning and the cleric are in the same battle. His fighter abilities would be more valuable in a party that does not have a fighter. If there was no fighter in the party, then Abserd's ability to lock down enemies with reactive strike and possibly disrupt spellcasting, and also if he took that extra hit points feat from the fighter tree, could make him a little tougher on the front lines. He would be filling a gaping hole in that party. The obvious benefit of having an eidolon around was to have a guaranteed way to have flanking and making an enemy off guard to sneak attacks. But in this fight, there already was the fighter and the dragon eidolon who could serve that role. And I'll point out the fact that those rogue feats depended on teamwork. You are part of a team, and Opportune Backstab would be useless if you didn't have another character to trigger it, and that other character could be the Ghost Lawyer. Another important point that was shown in this example, as a cleric, his advancement was frozen. His heal wasn't as powerful as the cleric's heals. However, it's very good to have more than one healer in this game. The cleric was knocked out in the fight, and he was able to heal the cleric from a distance because of the heal spell that he has. Basically, it's good to have some overlap between characters on some abilities, and not have everyone simply be good at one thing. So sometimes it pays off to not grow high in a specialty in order to grow more wide to help the party. So, closing statement. Yes, you can make yourself weaker by multiclassing in this game. You can grow less high. However, first of all, that doesn't make you useless. Because of the way proficiency works in this game, where you always add your level, you are always advancing in your core math. He only spent a few feats on the eidolon, but it was a decent combatant in the fight. Some abilities auto-scale and still pay off in the long run. The cantrips and focus spells from Wizard and Cleric auto-heighten, and some of those low-level fighter feats remained useful at level 13. Second, if you make your choices deliberately, as in not taking things that you know you're not going to use, you're generally going to be fine. And anyway, what usually matters more are the decisions you make in play. But ultimately, you're having fun. Abserd is a fun character to try to build in Pathfinder 2e. And okay, let's say if everyone is kind of building a wacky RP concept in a certain play group, and let's say they don't have teamwork in mind. The Game Master can use the working and counter building system to lower things a tad in order to create the same feeling of challenge that the party may want. The most important takeaway we see from this example is that Abserd's build is not useless next to the other characters. So that's it. It will be fun to see what happens in the last and climactic part of this series when Abserd is level 20. Each fight has overshadowed the previous one in epicness, and Abserd has become an even more multifarious character. So it should be fun. So support me, like this video, subscribe to my channel, and also support my Patreon. It allows me to continue making my channel. It also gives you early access to many of my videos and access to exclusive content, including my level 1 to eventually 20 character sheets for Abserd. You also get to preview my next video because I have my level 1 to 20 plan up. Also, join my Discord. We are almost at 5,000 people. People go there to talk about Pathfinder 2e, other gaming. Also, if you want to play Pathfinder 2e, there is a drop-in, drop-out organized play system that you can join. That's it. I've been Ronald the Rules Lawyer. I'll see you next time.